So now we are going to the world of scams and scandals. We will be taken on this journey by Chitra Subramaniam and Snigdha Poonam. Chitra, you know, is a veteran journalist who has covered a lot of ground breaking the Bofors story. And Poonam Snigdha is a young, promising star journalist, and she covers the world of scams, digital scams that we are all living in. What is going to astonish you over the next 1 hour is how big this industry has become. It is now industrial scale. So through the eyes of these two journalists, we shall travel into this. It's interesting, it's terrifying, it is huge, the world of scandal and scams. So Chitra, I want to start with you. The Bofors story broke in 1987, and there was a lot, it was basically a corruption scandal, kickbacks were given. What was most shocking to you? The fact that bribes were given by Swedish officials to Indian officials, or what was it the huge cover-up? What was worse? Why?
Thank you, Anita, for your, okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Anita, for that question, because what was more shocking, there were several things that shocked me. But to begin with, please remember that I was 29 and now I'm 68. So I was young and very ambitious for my country. And here was Rajiv Gandhi, you know, he'd announced that it was the 100th year of the Congress Party, and he'd said that he would weed out corruption, beginning with arms corruptions and corridors of power. So he had promised to clean up India, and I was as ambitious as he was. I mean, you know, you don't have to be in electoral politics to be ambitious about your country. So what was shocking to me was the several things. First of all, what came as a shock to me was what an arms dealer told me, that politicians are arms dealers in three-piece suits. So what shocked me was that people I thought were clean, there was no question, the clean and non-clean things had just collapsed. They were no longer good and bad. Everything was sort of in the middle. And then the other shocking thing was how, you know, how for so little my prime minister sold the country, you know, and sold the army. And that was shocking. But, you know, I'll talk to you later about other things that came to me as a shock. But the fact that the price of India was so little came to me as quite a shock. And you said you were scared. Something was, I'm sure she'll talk about it. But what is scary now is the ease with which arms are sold and arms deals are made right in front of our eyes. You know, whether it is Gaza or whether it is Ukraine, this is no longer hidden. It's not a hidden business at all. Where I live, part of the year in Geneva, it's all happening around right in front of you. You know, it's not a hidden thing that happens somewhere far away. It's right in front of you.
Chitra പറയുന്ന കേൾക്കാവോ ശരിക്ക്? കേൾക്കാവോ? Okay, very good. I was just asking whether they could listen to you properly, they could hear you well. Snigdha, you have covered all kinds of scams, and now there are so many types of scams like cyber fraud and call center scams and digital scams and crypto fraud. ഇതൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ അറിയാൻ മേലാത്ത ഓരോ പ്രശ്നങ്ങളാണ്. But all these scams, and we are just seeing the tip of the iceberg. We as ordinary citizens, we are probably seeing the tip of the iceberg. Describe to us a few scams that you have covered which are very common, very popular, or peculiar.
Sure. Is my voice audible? So my new book is called Scamlands, and it's sort of based on the 7-year-long journey that I undertook. It's like an immersive journey through the underbelly of scams and frauds that are, I would say they are reshaping societies in India, Asia, and beyond. And the book starts in India. I started from a place that I call home, which is the rural heartlands of eastern India, the Jamtara and wider swaths of Jharkhand, and then go on to Southeast Asia, which is where countries like Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand have now become the sort of center of global center for digital scams globally, hosting both the physical and the digital infrastructure. And then I go on to the United States, the eastern coast of the US, where I meet some of the victims whose lives have been devastated. And you might wonder, it sounds like a story of dazzling scale and size, but the story I was following was really very simple. And it's the story of the hundreds and thousands of the young people that we have in India, in Asia, who have opportunities, who have ambition, but not opportunities. And the story became about like what happens when a society as unequal as ours, opportunities are scarce, but ambition is not. And that became like the starting point for me sort of entering this so-called dark and dreadful world. But the insight that I came out with was that these are very ordinary people. One day they would be like working in a factory or an office or their family's shop. And the next day they are taking a flight to Dubai or Thailand or Vietnam and getting themselves trapped into these systems that now work practically as a new form of slavery. So once you arrive at a place like Cambodia, you might have started from a place like Calicut, because when I was in Southeast Asia, I met loads and loads of young people from all parts of India, from the UP to Assam to Kerala and Tamil Nadu. And all they know is that they have a job offer. They ask for nothing else, not even like the name of the company. All they know is that they have a job offer and they're offered a very attractive salary. Once they arrive at these scam compounds, the scam lords take away their passports. They essentially held them as hostages. And if they do not get up and get to their scam shift, the punishments can range from a few sort of lashes of the whip to being murdered and thrown out of a black vehicle. And so one of the most sort of dreadful scams that emerges from this system, starting with unemployment and sort of being hosted at a dazzling scale of infrastructure, is called pig butchering scams. I don't know if anyone of you has faced it directly or through someone else, but it starts with a message that's sent to you accidentally. And that, I met someone who was from Karnataka, and he told me that once he landed at one of these compounds, he hacked into someone's Instagram account, and they would mostly sort of look for Russian influencers or like young women from countries where women do not keep their profiles locked up. And then he would impersonate a Russian influencer, like a young, attractive woman, and try to target middle-aged men in Western countries and like have a very long, very carefully calibrated and grown relationship. And the scariest aspect of this scams was that they do not ask you for money. At no point in this very sort of long and intense relationship will they say, you need to send me some money on this or that pretext. Instead, they will say that because they see a life with you together and because that life needs to be comfortable and well-sustained, they will lead you into a whole sort of journey of cryptocurrency investment. And it begins with maybe a $5,000 or $10,000. It might return, and it shows returns initially, which is obviously all like sort of like, without going into too much detail, which is all like a facade. And ultimately people start, end up losing easily more than $1 million or pounds. And what happens to to someone like my source from Karnataka is even scarier, because if they refuse to do that, they could be in for a very, very rough time. And even if they want, they can't leave.
So I request both of you all to kind of make your answers a little shorter so that we can cover more ground. There are lots of interesting things in both cases. Chitra, just to go back to 1987 is when this Bofors scandal broke. Many in the audience here would not even have been born. Why should they care?
Good question, Anita. I think they should care because it's a self-respect of a nation. It's my country's self-respect. And we were cheated. Our taxpayers were cheated. So I think they should care. But it's an important point that you make, because Bofors, it still divides people into two. There are those who believe that Rajiv Gandhi was not involved, and there are those who believe he was. So it's very, very interesting for me that why should you care? Because money was made. But then there are those who say no.
And I think your book also has these interesting revelations as to why we should care, because it outlines the way there was this cover-up. It talks about media complicity.
Yeah.
It talks about the institutional silence and collusion, which still continues around the world. So these are perennial stories that we should never, ever forget.
Yeah, and the important point is that there have been scams in India where much more money has been, there's been much more money which has been siphoned. But this was the first time that it washed around the Prime Minister's office. And I was able to prove that a friend of the Prime Minister had got the money, hence all the, all the divisions in it. And the point that you made about how institutions, every institution in the country, had been killed. For example, he had, the Prime Minister had a majority that no leader has today. I mean, the government says, 400 par, 400, they will never get 400. He had 440. And then can you imagine, every institution, the parliament, the judiciary, the executive, even the army was not spared to save the skin of one man. So that's why it's important.
Yeah. Chitra, in your book, you raise a very, Chitra, it's Snigdha, you raise a very interesting point in your book, which is that India has among the largest pool of labor, and Indian workers, young Indian workers are hardworking, they are resilient, they're resourceful, they are clever, they're inexpensive. A large number of these workers are also unemployed or underemployed, and they are drawn to scams because very often that is the only source of income. So these large numbers of young men and women going into the scam industry is a problem for India, no doubt, but what Snigdha also points out is a problem for the world. Would you explain?
Yes, I think I sort of started speaking about it with my previous answer, which was the going back to the hundreds and thousands, if not millions of people who have, when you talk to them, they can't see any way out of where they find themselves stuck. Maybe a little bit of education. Most of them, have completed school or completed college, but like they don't know how to go any further from that. And scams have unfortunately become a very easy way for them to make a space in an economy that at best ignores them and at worst forces them out. And to them, that kind of lowers the moral boundaries for a lot of these people. So like, when they get an offer from a scam law to join a compound or even like join a call center, a scam center in Delhi, they probably will not take a long time to think their options.
And also, I guess this has become like an international crime syndicate. It's transnational, this crime, these slavery compounds that you talked about earlier. These are there in Myanmar, it's there in Cambodia, the scams take place in the United States. So it's become an international industry. And in fact, recently, I saw on the Financial Times, there was a video that they put out showing how big the scam industry is today. It is something in about a few years, in about 5 to 7 years, it's likely to become $15 trillion. That means it is like the second largest economy in the world after the United States, but more than China. That is how big it is, and it is across the world. Now, this level of spreading and depth of this becoming such a big international industry cannot take place unless there is political patronage. That's what all corruption is all about. And I would like to start with you, Chitra, what the kind of political support for the kind of Bofors corruption, and you, Snigdha, about the grassroots level political patronage.
Yeah, what you said is very important, that this kind of level of corruption cannot happen without political patronage. It's impossible. And this was the other shocking thing that I realized in Bofors, that how the government of Sweden and the government of India, my own government, both governments, Olof Palme, who was going around the world saying, oh, disarmament and all that, he was actually an arms dealer. And my own government, the two of them colluded at every level, from foreign ministry to the defense ministry. They were colluding and saying there was actually a tuition class. I mean, one of the documents I got, it showed the biggest bureaucrats in my country. I don't know. I mean, people like N.N. Vora or Gopi Rao may not make sense to you, but these are the top bureaucrats in my country who sat in a room with Bofors people telling them, don't say this, don't say that. And we had something called the Joint Parliamentary Committee, which was an absolute sham. It was a parliamentary. So, they were actually having what I call a tuition about don't say this, don't say that. So coming back to collusion, it was so shameful. It was, I don't even want to use the word. I don't know what the word is. They were actually telling each other, you tell this, you can't tell this, don't say this, I can't say this. And these were the top bureaucrats in the country.
So that's bureaucrats, top-level bureaucrats, ministers. Go to the grassroots, go to the villages. How does it happen there?
It's quite relevant, actually, what Chitra said, and with Anita sort of joining the dots. The kind of entrenched corruption, the kind of sort of political complicity that Chitra uncovered with Bofors is something that sort of, whittles down. It travels from the highest levels of power and influence in Delhi to the grassroots level at the, in the remotest village at the last panchayat that you can find, and how it anchors the grassroots scam networks is, you obviously, like, if you go to a village, you will find a community of scammers who are the people who make the phone calls, who send you the text messages. But then they are they are a very small set of players in the larger economy, where you also have the mukhias who put up bail for them when they go to jail, the police officers who take bribes to not press charges, the local MLAs who will press them into donating funds for their elections. And so then there's a quid pro quo, where once these guys get into trouble, the MLAs will sometimes even hold a dharna outside the police station to say that, you have to release my guys, or ask for evidence. And so even if the scamsters want to turn back, the larger political economy will not let them.
Yes. Chitra, you mentioned earlier that the nation is divided into two, those who believe that Rajiv Gandhi is a crook and those who believe he is innocent. There is a box of documents, Bofors documents. There's a box which was handed over from Bofors to the Indian officials in 1997. That box has not been opened yet, and in 2011, the case was closed. We did not expect anything from the Congress government, so that was it. But the BJP government came to power 12 years ago, and they never reopened the box. Why?
Well, yeah, thanks. What does that tell you, Anita? That they're all in it, right?
Sorry?
They're all in it. Sooner or later, you tell me, you point a finger at me, there'll be four pointing back at you. Because this was another disappointment and shock for me, because I thought, oh, the good people are coming, and the bad people will go to jail. Nothing of that happened. They didn't even open the documents, and they said 3% kya hai? It's not 3%, it's 18% of 1.4 billion. And the boxes point out to where the money went. So nobody wants to know. And I have actually had politicians telling me that it's better to keep it closed. Why? And then when I spoke to George Fernandez, he was the defense minister in the late George Fernandez. He was told by the National Security Advisor that not to open the boxes because we should not touch Sonia Gandhi. So how close is that for collusion? Yeah. They're all, like you said, this government came to power on Bofors, and then what happened?
Yeah. So, there is a saying in English, some people call it tomato, some people call it tomato. It's the same thing at the end of the day, there's no difference between these political parties when it comes to this. Leaving Bofors behind, let's go to these scammers in the sense of, Snigdha, I want to start with you. Can you give us a sense of the kind of mindset, the personality, the behavior patterns of these scammers? And in particular, if you could talk about how they emotionally manipulate their victims.
I've been to parts of India where the young people start training in scams before they have left school. And practically, that is what they learn when they are in school. Not as part of classroom lessons, but a large part of their time in school, they just like hang out with seniors or other kids from other classes who are teaching them how to execute a scam. It might sound simple, but it is not. You have to understand how to even find the numbers for the people that you're targeting, how to begin a conversation, how to hold the conversation, how to make them trust you, even if it's like for a minute. I mean, you might think it's easy to get someone to share their OTP so that they can enter your online account and make a shopping worth 50,000 on Amazon, but this all takes work, and it all begins with training. And when they enter these networks, they are just trying to get a sister married or trying to like help their fathers through a bad farming season. But 2 months in, 3 months in, the mentality begins to change because they can see the amount of money there is in it, and then like that also gives them power in the local networks, influence, even like marriage markets. The prospects in the marriage markets change, and it just, turning back becomes difficult. It's like trade-off is just so obvious that I haven't really seen anyone exit and then be happy with it.
What is the mindset of the well-heeled elite bureaucrat ministers? What is the mindset, of the ones who are corrupt, but those who are, well-heeled, they're elite, they're top bureaucrats and ministers? How is their mindset? Is it any different?
Well, actually, no. We just think that it's greed, right? So you can be wealthy and greedy and good-looking and greedy, and you are poor and greedy, but what joins you is greed. And what shocked me was the power that you have to keep your country clean. That I'm pretty sure people at the bottom may not share that kind of power. But you would think that with increasing power comes increasing responsibility. What I found was that with increasing power comes increasing greed. So that was what, and they've all got accounts here and there. I mean, this whole thing about Swiss bank accounts and the mystery and all, everybody has an account.
Snigdha, these scammers that you talk about, they are very ingenious, they're very clever, they're very smart. Can you give some examples of how innovative they are, how creative they are when they're scamming?
Well, one of the most impressive thing about these scamsters is that they know us. And some of the most deep sort of sociological insights I've found about Indian societies from talking to them. So they know what we want. They know what we fear. They know what we desire. I once tried to be a romance scammer for a brief while, just to understand what it is on the on the other side, on the other end of the line. And I was blown away by just like the kind of their sort of understanding of the market. So these were people who made fake dating apps, and they were targeting the kind of young men who would not have an opportunity to find someone to go on a date. So I joined the dating app. It was a fake dating app, and almost immediately I was contacted by the people who ran the app, and they wanted me to have these deep online romantic encounters with these men who did not know that I was paid by the app to have these conversations with them, to lead them to believe that I was in love with them. And my job was to convince them to buy these digital digital gifts on the app, these VIP packages, like a virtual diamond that translates to $300 or 400 pounds. And I would keep asking them. So, because their minutes with me would run out. And we have a minute, and we get to a point where I just ask them where you live and what do you like to, what are your hobbies, and then the call cuts off. And then they have to keep paying more. And, and this is just one of the scams that I'm talking about. Yeah, and I think each one of them was impressive in its own way.
Scams have always been with us. It's part of human, evolution, I guess. But in what way have the scams evolved?
I think they, like I said, they have a very keen sense of what are the triggers for our society. And look, some of them would tell me very honestly, like for the pig butchering scams that I spoke about earlier, there is greed. We want to invest in cryptocurrency because we think there will be, just enormous amounts of money at the other end. There's also the desire for intimacy, to find someone to escape our loneliness, and they're watching us closely. And it's not so much that, they are. It's not so much that they are creating these apps and these websites and these sort of systems for money laundering and for, to trap you, but they're also just looking at us. And honestly, some of the scams that I followed were upgrading every few weeks, every few months, like with the Jamtara guys. I think that was one of the most grassroots, one of the most homespun scams. And those are scams that are still targeting us, KBC and KYC and digital arrest and e-commerce, and every few weeks they will have something new, and they will be sharing it with their sort of fellows in the economy, and like constantly changing scripts, constantly sort of thinking of new ways to move money. So that I think that is now one of our greatest skills, if I may say so.
Chitra, in the international scene, the corruption and the skullduggery has become much worse. So today you have, for example, scandals like the Panama Papers, the Paradise Papers, the Pandora Papers. The scale of corruption has become enormous.
Yes.
Is that the main difference that you see between the time of Bofors and now? Or are there other things that have happened to make that evolution go in a different direction, international corruption?
Anita, every time that a wrong is not righted, then something bigger happens. Then the scamsters go bigger and bigger and further and further. And let me give you an example. You talked about innovation, innovative ways of scamming. I had an arms dealer who told me, you can buy drugs in Medellin, then you can sell drugs in Medellin, the laundering. With the money, you buy a painting in Hong Kong, and the next day you put the money in a Swiss bank. So it's all clean. And no one, you can't do this because the arms of the government are much slower than this kind of money. So, regulation will never be as fast as.
Yeah.
And then to that you add corrupt officials. So, it's when you say have things become much bigger, yes, they have. But our job is to not give up. And I know people, like a friend of mine, his mother was killed, Daphne Caruana Galizia. She is a Maltese journalist who was killed because she was investigating. And governments still feel threatened by us. So, it's not as if we sort of give up. I never give up. Because if we were to give up, why are we even having this panel, So I think there's hope. And societies survive on hope. So, yeah.
So, Snigdha, are these scams a manifestation of a changing India?
Yes and no. I argue in the book that, these scams that we are all vulnerable to, they're thriving in cracks that we have made. Cracks that either they existed thousands of years before we were born, or those that we've made by, treating people as others in, in otherization. It's become like so easy for us to think of, whole sets of people as others, that people that we can't relate to, people who are bad or not one of us. And I think it just to give you an example, I mean, caste system is a beautiful vehicle for oppression, a very sort of efficient vehicle, not, and the same system can be overturned so that if someone's at the bottom of that system of oppression, will think it is, it is fair. It is fair. It's become like the scams become a tool for revenge then. Scams become a tool for turning the tables or leveling the playing field. And once once you've kind of started on this journey, as we've been keep saying, then it's the incentives don't let you return. But often that instinct for someone like, I've tried to be a romance scammer for months, for a few weeks. But then the thing, the instinct was the same. For the women who are in the business, they already know that they face so much injustice at the hands of women, at the hands of men. And this might feel like a prank to them. So to some even, it feels like revenge in its own twisted way. And I saw something similar with political persecution and the divides between Hindu and Muslims that have just gone out of control in the country. And I think the more that those cracks keep solidifying and the more cracks that we keep, they form, the more scams will settle in those spaces.
Chitra, very quickly, how do these corrupt people launder their money? What do they invest it in? Or how do they do this?
How do they launder their money? By buying property in London. Properties, they put a lot of it in property. And you can do a lot of benami property. I mean, you can't keep money. But for me, it would be property. They buy gold. They buy paintings. That's a very flourishing market, the art market. And up until recently in Switzerland, you could actually buy stolen stuff. And you would say bon foi. You said you didn't know it was stolen, so the law would forgive you. But that has since closed. But I think they buy a lot of art. They buy property. Increasingly art, I think. I mean, that's what I think.
Great. Snigdha, Chitra mentioned that regulation is slow to catch up. And when we talked, you did mention that some things can be done. For example, this KYC, this Kaun Banega Crorepati, that one was controlled. So there are things can be done. And I thought you raised a very pertinent point, what the Prime Minister could do. Can you just talk about that? You don't remember what you said? It was about Prime Minister talked about how important it was to be for digital adoption.
Right, yes.
But at the same time, the downside should also be emphasized by no less than the Prime Minister if you want to be serious about controlling this.
Yes, you're right. And I think, both of you kind of touched on the point that the regulation will always be slower than innovation in the world of scams. And even if you have an honest police officer, they can only do so much before the scammers upgrade and innovate. And they'll find their ways to route the money and to sort of keep adding levels of anonymity. And I'm telling you what they told me. And the thing that they fear most is awareness. Awareness at a societal level where before you get a call, you're already suspicious of what the person is going to say. And that awareness is like, sure, a bank can send you a cautionary note every few days or a few weeks. But like if someone like the Prime Minister or people at the highest levels of power and authority in your community or at the level of the nation start talking about it, I think that could dismantle the system that has taken root more efficiently than some of the other measures that I could think of.
Chitra, I don't think there are very many people in the world who have devoted 10 years of their life, not just their working career, of their life to an investigation. Today, when you sit here and talk about it, what are the big takeaways from that experience?
for me, 10 years of my life, from the beginning of the scam to beginning of the scandal to when the documents were transferred to India in a box, which have never been opened. The biggest takeaways for me are that the biggest takeaways for me personally are that corruption is an ongoing thing. You know, it's not that it begins and ends. Governments have their hands in the till, and don't be naive. And every time that they get, you know, why am I at it? I'm still. I mean, you're both journalists. Just the magic of meeting a source. It never goes away. I think people should know when you meet a real source. The big takeaway is that, you know, it brought down a government. You know, and the fact that a government fell tells me that I believe that most people in the world are not corrupt. I believe the world is full of good people. I'm given an opportunity. That's the biggest takeaway for me, that I learned so much. That people working up to me today, even now, saying, you know, you showed a path, you showed us courage, you showed us this, you showed us that. The biggest takeaway is for me that the world is full of wonderful people.
Yes.
Even though I lived a terrible experience, but the world is not like that.
Yeah, exactly. Snigdha, the last question to you before we turn to the audience, just 1 minute. You're an expert now in this field. Can you give us some tips? Not how to scam, but how to save ourselves from scammers, how to kind of spot, detect, you know, scammers who are on the calls or on emails. How do we detect them? Can you give us some tips?
I'll just give one. It's worked for me because it's not like they are not trying to scam me. Always like read the message that they're sending or listen carefully to what they're saying, and you'll find red flags. Like someone sent me a message saying, impersonating my sister, hacking into her account and sending me a message saying, hi, I've accidentally sent you the code to my Facebook or something. Can you give it to me? I'm talking to her 24/7. I was about to, but then I noticed that she didn't mention me by name. My sister would always mention me by name. So just keep going back to the script, and you'll find something or the other.
Thank you. And so with that, the Q&A session will begin now. We're ready to take, our panelists are ready to take questions. Any questions? Yes, please. Just 1 minute, they're getting you the microphone. We have 10 minutes and we have to end in exactly 10 minutes. So keep your questions really short. Keep it a question and tell us who you're addressing it to.
Good afternoon, everybody. A very vibrant session, actually. My point is that Transparency International places India in its report published every year, one of the top corrupt countries in the world. Babasaheb Ambedkar, while speaking in the Constituent Assembly, said, our constitution is workable, it is flexible too, it is strong enough to hold the nation together both in wartime and in peacetime. Indeed, when I say so, if things go wrong under the constitution, the reason will not be that we had a bad constitution, but to blame man for his vileness. My question is, madams, a report published last year, August 2025, 31% of the MPs, member of parliament, sitting in our parliament are with criminal backgrounds. 29% of the MLAs sitting in the legislative assemblies across India, throughout India, are with criminal backgrounds. See, whether these people are having morality or constitutional morality, how they are governing us, on what background, with what morality they are ruling us. My question is, please, everything goes legally afterwards. It reaches up to Supreme Court. Whether the people of India, the public, the citizens of India, how they can enter in and what measures they can take to prevent corruption, malpractices and scams. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. And I think we have the ADR, which keeps a track of the corruption in Parliament. If 1/3 of that's something we know, I'm sure there are many that we don't know, is to expose them, my source said that, it's like walk in the sunlight because cockroaches, they don't like sunlight. If you go into a kitchen at night and you put on the light, there are cockroaches that run away. The only way is to keep exposing them and, not give up. Giving up is not an option, sir. Giving up is not an option. And despite the fact that we've looked at scams, most people are clean. Most people are not corrupt. Most people are good. So that is the force. That is the power we have. That is the power we have, sir.
I am to get the clarification from you on one account that the scam is a reality and that was continuing from the memories of time. Scam is not a new chapter in our history. Even from the man, what I'm to say, from, in the history, if you look back, corruption and scams are a real fact. It is a malady. That is a social malady, actually. So I come to an inference. Whether I am right or not, I don't know. This is a social malady, but with the connivance of the society generally. Because there is a passive lot of people whom we have not mentioned about. The people are good actually. At heart they are good at. But still, a portion, most active, a segment of people are not at all bothered about what is happening. So scams continue. Just investigative journalists like you people who have done some, what I'm to say, great services, is apart from all that, this is a reality. So social connivance is one of the reasons for the continuation of this malady scam.
Actually, Snigdha's book is very, very clear on that. She talks about the socio-economic, political factors, the fact that they don't have economic opportunities, the fact that there is caste discrimination, there is religious persecution, there is political polarization. All these factors are fertile ground for scams to take root, because where else are these youngsters to go? Her book is very, very good in terms of not just defining the scammers as, villains and victims, but takes into account the whole context in which this is coming. And now it is going out of control and it's becoming a worldwide situation. Thank you so much for your statement. Can I request the audience to ask questions and keep it really short? We now have 5 minutes total.
You have mentioned the Bofors file is now closed and yet to reopen because some reasons, despite an antagonistic government has come to power. What could be the motivation? I am saying this because the Thakur Commission also had not been reopened. Though a lot of controversy would have occurred if it was reopened.
What Chitra said that in her speech, earlier she said that basically what comes is that they're all in it. They're all in it, different groups, different parties, and it's arms dealers who are involved in this, and they keep everybody happy so that they can get their work done. So this is a systemic problem now that, not just India, but the arms industry around the world and how they have, strangled the economy, the politics. And basically, they are colorblind when it comes to supporting political parties. They will support whoever is in power, however they can get their work done. So that is why, whether the governments change, but the box remains closed. The files remains closed. Why? We ask that. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Ms. Chitra, you sort of spoke about how the Bofors scam was enough to bring down a government and that is how things should be, and I completely agree with you. But what would you talk about today's context where corruption at large scale, just for an example, the electoral bonds, has just left no impact and we still have this government in power? That's my first question. Second, Ms. Snigdha, I wanted to ask you about, maybe you would have seen on YouTube, there are these videos where scams are unearthed. You can watch people scamming people and then they realize that, okay, they are being recorded. What is their life after they're exposed? And secondly, is there room for remorse? Is there a scammer who eventually at some point catches on to the fact that the people they're scamming actually have lives and it affects them to a point where they quit? What does their life look after that?
Yes, they do. Many of them feel remorse, and I've seen like through these years, many of them quit, and then some people come back, some people don't come back. But I think the sad thing is that for the people who don't come back, there is nothing else waiting for them, and I think we just need to create opportunities so that people have an option to exit, because entering is very easy.
You mentioned about remorse. Again, Snigdha's, her book has this reference to this guy who's scamming, and the victim is somebody in the United States. And now we think everybody in the United States is very rich, but this lady happens to be living on food stamps. That is like a government dole to have food. That's the level of poverty. When this scammer realizes that, she explains how he feels the remorse. He feels really bad. He has sleepless nights. But next day he goes back to scamming because there is nothing else. What else can he do to earn an income? Okay, we take the last question.
Yes.
Yes, please.
This is not a question, but
Then
one
keep
word-
it short, please.
Yes, I would like to express my dissent over your statement, Anita ma'am, because you have stated that a statement of tomato and tomato, and that appears to be clearly a political statement, which I strongly disagree with you, ma'am. It should be corrected. I request you to correct that.
Yeah, I didn't get
You
that.
made a statement like tomato and tomato.
Yeah.
So that is clearly a political statement, according to me.
Tomato and tomato?
Because every
It's a vegetable.
No, your opinion regarding that all the political parties are alike.
It
You
can
made
be
that
anything.
statement.
In every country, there are two main parties. Every country is like Republicans and Democrats.
Yes.
Every country, the liberals and the conservatives, every country is like this. You will find, this is not to do with just India. You will find this across the world. When in power, they will continue with a certain
But
set of
isn't
things.
that a political statement then, ma'am?
No, it is a factual statement.
I strongly disagree anyway.
Okay,
Because
most-
being an optimist, I disagree.
Most welcome. No, that's nice to hear that. Okay, we take one last question. We have to vacate then. Okay, please, a short question.
Yeah, like Anita ma'am has said that like most of us were even born during the time when this came out. And my question is, whenever a scam gets exposed, the authorities often use denials, slanted stories, and diversion, manipulation mechanics to change the public perception. So how this tactics or pattern has changed over time, that is from the time of print to this digital era. The conversation has changed from this unilateral to this dynamic time. How has this tactics of pattern or manipulation, patterns of manipulation has changed over time
Okay.
from the time of
Manipulation.
to the digital era?
How has the pattern of manipulation changed over time? Yeah.
Well, the patterns of manipulation is something that they keep upgrading. Was that the question?
Question was to Chitra ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah.
How was the pattern?
The pattern of manipulation from the part of the government has changed from the print era to the digital era. Because how they manipulate, they use diversion tactics to manipulate the public perception. So how this has changed from a unilateral time, like during the print era, the conversation was unilateral to some extent, because we only get to read, or we don't have a voice to talk back to them. But in this digital era, there's the social media, we can talk back. But again, government can use manipulation tactic more efficiently in the using a social media. So how this change?
Are you asking how the government's pattern of manipulation has changed? Yeah.
Well, actually,
quickly.
it's a good question. I'm looking at the time. But, today, manipulation is that much more difficult. And if you had asked me this 5-6 years ago, I would have said maybe it's the same. But it's not the same anymore because, I've co-founded a website, the News Laundry, the News Minute, the News Laundry. We're all hitting back. We are able to hit back, and we're always in trouble. Because I think people are not foolish anymore. The same people, what can we do? We question. We question, we want to know what's going on. And the fact of questioning has put politicians on they're nervous. I'm not saying they're nervous that they don't make money. But the fact remains that today you can question. And that is the power that we have in the media. The social media has given us more power than we
Okay.
had in the print days.
Okay, thank you so much, Chitra. Thank you so much, Snigdha. Thank you all for coming. Sorry it's a rush. The next panel has to begin. The next session has to begin. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you.